Hello, Scoobies, and how are you all doing? I hope you're doing fantastically fabulous. Okay. You're gonna hear some very loud noises, and I apologize about that, but I have an asshole who lives downstairs. And I'm working on getting rid of him, so I apologize if you can hear his very loud, very inappropriate music at this hour while I try and record this video. Okay. So, today what we're going to talk about, or try to talk about, because I really want to the person who lives below me, is we're going to talk about the Morrigan. Now, I really hope that you can't hear the music that's playing downstairs. Hello, YouTube. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing fantastically fabulous. So, I've been trying to figure out a way to end this series because we could talk about the Morrigan for decades. We could go into the stories, we could go into the lore, we could go into everything. Now, what I did want to talk about today is how we communicate, and I want to keep this video kind of short because it is the end of the series, right? Like, we've been here, we've been talking about all kinds of things, we've made an incense, I kind of discussed, you know, an oil by substituting out an ingredient. I've talked about how, in my opinion, new witches shouldn't really, you know, reach out right away. And what I'm talking about that is, if your craft started yesterday, right, like, or a month ago, or if you're like, you know, it's been a year, but you've still got lots of questions, and you're still kind of diving into things, you know, when I talk about new witches, in my opinion, I consider you a new witch until you're at least 2 years in. You know how people are like the year and a day? 2 years, 2 days. You know, read everything you can, watch everything you can, ask every single question you can, and even 2 years is not enough. Like, I still consider myself a new witch, and I've been doing this for 13, almost 14 years. Like, ooh, girl, I'm getting old, right? Like, I still consider myself a new witch, but when I say new witches shouldn't reach out to the Morrigan, what I'm talking about is her energy, okay? Hecate, people could argue she's got the same kind of energy. She doesn't really mess around. She doesn't, you know, she doesn't mess around, right? Like, right? But when it comes to the Morrigan, her energy is like Hecate's, but 5 times more. And again, you have to understand that these are all my opinions, based off of my experiences. How do you communicate with Morrigan? Now, there are a million different ways. Some people, she's a voice in their head. You might want to get a doctor to check that out. Just kidding. She appears in dreams. When you're writing in your journal, it's like she takes over your hand. Like, I've heard tons of stories of how people communicate with the Morrigan. Now, as I've said in a previous video, the Morrigan, for me, when she communicates with me, it's like she's speaking a different language. I don't understand what she's saying, the words don't make sense, it's very cryptic, it's hard to understand, and we both just kind of get frustrated. And again, as I've said in a previous video, I used to reach out a lot to a friend who works with the Morrigan and, you know, translations, because it didn't make sense. But now, and I've been doing this for a while now, very long while, is we communicate through the tarot cards. Now, I'm not going to show you how we do that because that's very personal, that's very private, that's something we do at night, or, you know, whenever she has a message for me. I do like to burn her incense. I do like to, you know, conjure her. Again, she doesn't sit on your altar. She's not just waiting for you to call on her. Sometimes she'll come to you. Sometimes you'll go to her. Sometimes she just won't respond. Truth. Sometimes she just will not respond. I've talked about sort of reading tarot cards and having a conversation with her, and it's difficult for me to describe without showing you, but I can't show you because I need to keep some aspects of my relationship with her and somewhat private, if that makes any sense. Like, I haven't told you a lot of things in this series about how we work together. I mostly focused on how we met and how she has changed my life. And again, this entire series is based off of my experience with working with her, okay? Everybody's experience is going to be different. Nobody is going to have the same experience. And if you try and sit there and tell me that my experience is invalid, ooh, girl, we're gonna have some issues. And this is pretty heavy. You're like, oh, violence. We're used to violence from you. How do you use tarot cards to communicate? Like, I've talked about using the Celtic cross and kind of having a conversation, and I'm sure a lot of you are like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work. Tarot cards, you don't have a conversation. Like, no, that's wrong. And I'm just gonna stop you. I'm just gonna stop you right there because you're wrong. Don't invalidate my craft, and I won't invalidate your whatever you call yours. Right? Like, we can get shady, we can get rude, we can get inappropriate. So imagine you've laid out a Celtic cross, right? Pick any cards, whatever, it doesn't matter. You read it like the Celtic cross. Nothing there changes. You do the exact same way you would read the Celtic cross. You know how to read the Celtic cross, I know how to read the Celtic cross, thank God for little wisdom. Everybody and their mother's dog knows how to read the Celtic cross, okay? Okay, so we all know how to read the Celtic cross, and we know what the Celtic cross is for. It is to give you an overview of a particular situation. In this particular case, each card, or sometimes sets of cards in the Celtic cross will tell you different things for different situations. So as I stated earlier, you know, she might tell you you're going to have a great week this week, and then 3 other cards might tell you that your job is going to change in one way, and then another set of cards will tell you, based off of the conversation, what your hopes and your fears and how you're progressing and what the outcome of this particular conversation could be, okay? So it's you read it identical to the Celtic cross. Now, why is it that we communicate with tarot cards? What is it about the tarot cards that makes it easier, this is a piece of wax, to communicate with her? So when you're reading the Celtic cross, okay, this is so difficult to explain. Like, I cannot explain this without showing you, but I can't show you. So, as I've already stated, we all know how to read the Celtic cross, and for me, not for you, maybe for you, I don't know you, but for me, it's all a conversation. It's not one situation. You're not going to her and asking her, how's my week gonna go? How's my life going? You're more going and saying, what messages do you have for me? Or is there, like, I have a feeling that something isn't sitting right, what's going on? Like, they don't have to be precise questions. You don't have to be like, is this guy that I did this love spell on going to go out with me? I mean, you could. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's more of a, let's have a conversation. And because it seems to me like she speaks a whole different language, the images on the cards are really what help me decipher, because we all know with tarot cards, the images can be interpreted a billion different ways, if not infinite different ways, if not infinite plus n, okay, where n is any number. It just goes on and on and on and on and on, and we're just going on, and everybody's got a different interpretation of every single card, okay? So, with her, just because the moon comes up doesn't necessarily mean that I can't see everything, right? Just because the sun comes up doesn't necessarily mean that everything is sunshine and rainbows and happiness. Just because the death card comes up upside down doesn't mean that I'm resistant to change. It just means that, you know, in a particular conversation we had where an instance of that came up, it was more of a change was supposed to happen, but you went a different road, and you had a different kind of change, if that makes sense, right? So when I first met the Margon and we started communicating, she would come through as clear and concise, like, I want you to do this, I need you to do that, or do the spell and I will put the energy in for you, or, you know, whatever. But then there are times where she's trying to say something and it doesn't, it comes through as gibberish. It's like, she's like, okay, today we're blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wait, what? What? Like, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's gibberish. It makes no sense. And so when you lay out the cards, it becomes clearer. Again, for me, this may not resonate with you. I know other people, you know, they can go into a deep meditative trance, they can go to the astral plane, they can go here, they can go there, they can just talk to her, they can just speak their words out of their mouth and hear her voice in their head, right? But that's not necessarily how it works for me, okay? Sometimes, but very, very rarely. So this is where the tarot cards came in for me, because I can lay out the Celtic cross. And you might be asking, why the Celtic cross? It's the spread she wants. Okay, it's the spread. I mean, sometimes we'll do other spreads. We'll do Tell Me a Story, and basically you just turn over a card and you read it sequentially as you're turning over the cards, and you keep going until the conversation is over, right? And you get upside down cards, you get upright cards, you get messages, you get, you know, you get everything. And the Celtic cross is the easiest one for us to do because the conversation comes through really clearly. Even if there are 4 different things that she's trying to tell me, they're all connected. And that's what I really like about the Celtic cross, is that they're all connected to one single outcome, regardless of what the conversation is about, okay? So I originally wanted to show you like how we communicate, but I basically was told, you need to redo this video, I don't want this showing. And that was fine. That's why we're doing this. There isn't really much more to add to this, this concept of how we communicate, because it's what works for me. Now, what works for you could be different. You might do fire reading, you might do pendulums, you might just, as I said earlier, you might just say words, you know, just, hi, how are you? And then all of a sudden it's like, in your brain, I'm doing good, you know, like, whatever. The Morrigan is tricky for me, specifically, to communicate with her. She may not be tricky for you. I know lots of other witches on the internet have no issue communicating with her in plain old English. But, as I said earlier, it sometimes comes through as this very gibberish, mangled, you can't decipher it, and then you're basically telling your friend to drop everything in her life, hi, and translate for you. And that doesn't really work. Not when your friend has, like, 20 children and billions of other things going on in her life, and it's just like, okay, so we cannot just tell you to drop your life, right? And sometimes the Morrigan has really important information for you. Like, she'll come to you in a dream. Like, when she comes to me in the dreams, it's clear. I understand. I can understand everything she's saying, but she doesn't always come to me in dreams. Sometimes I'll just be, you know, sitting at my desk doing work, and she will come to me. Basically, she wants something from me. She wants me to do something. It may not directly impact either A, what I'm doing, B, my job, C, my life. It just might be for her in general. And so she'll come to me, and it's like middle of the day, and it's like, okay, wait, just shh. Let me get the cards, right? So, now, throughout this series, which, you know, I've been recording for like almost a year now, marijuana has become something that was even easier to communicate with her. Now, that holds its own issues. I mean, Canada fully legalized recreational use of marijuana. However, it's expensive, and I could use that money for other things. So now we're just back to the incense and the cards, which is fine, which is perfect because that saves me a lot of money. It makes it a little easier to communicate with her in plain English when, you know, you're out of your tree, but it also makes it harder to figure out when I'm stoned and communicating with Morgan, it feels like I'm on the astral plane and the physical at the exact same time, and I hate that feeling. Because when I go to the astral plane and I come back, I'm in what I consider the in-between, okay? Where you are in between the astral plane and you are in between the physical plane, and you are still trying to come back, and you're grounding yourself to basically latch onto the physical plane. Now, again, this is all for me, this may not resonate for you, so don't come for me, but when I smoke weed and communicate with her, it's like that feeling of the in-between never goes away, and it doesn't upset me. It's just a very disorienting feeling that just you want to run away from, you know? Like, you just don't want that feeling. So, the point that I'm trying to say is that the way we communicate, or the way I communicate with the Morgan, will never be the same way that you communicate with Morgan. The conversations we have will never be the same because everybody's craft is different. And that's really what I wanted to get across with this series. I wanted to discuss that this is how we met, this is what it's like to work with her, this is how we communicate, which, tarot cards. I mean, there isn't really much to add to that. You do the Celtic cross, and you feel her energy, and she basically tells you in English. That's like the only time she'll, you know, no gibberish. It's like, it's more of a yes or a no when you read the card. Like, if I read the death card upright and I was like, oh, there's a lot of change coming, she might be like, no, that's not what that means. And then you have to go back and you have to look at the rest of the cards, because everything is connected. Okay? When we're having a conversation, every piece of that conversation is connected to an outcome. Okay? And it's difficult because she mostly just says yes or no to my interpretation of the particular card that I'm looking at in the spread, or the cards as a whole. And you know, when I first started doing this, there was a lot of no's, and now that I'm doing it more, and practicing it more, and communicating with her more, and sometimes we just have regular old conversations where it doesn't mean anything. And sometimes we have conversations about, hey, you need to do this, or hey, I need that, or hey, this is coming down the pipeline, and you need to be careful, and you need to pay attention, stuff like that. Everybody's relationship with whatever deity they work with, and specifically the Morgan, because that's what the series is about, will never, ever be the same. Okay? And I have talked about how the Morgan seems, to me at least, to tell me sometimes when you know, you watch other witches and, you know, they'll say, oh, I work with the Morgan, or I work with, you know, whatever. But the ones that I watch that work with the Morgan, some of them are very knowledgeable. They know exactly what they're talking about. The Morgan will say, you know, I haven't seen this person in like 6 months, but they're still talking about me as if I work with them every day, and it's like I haven't been around. And I think the biggest issue, at least when it comes to the Morgan, is understanding her energy. And that's why I have stated that new witches shouldn't really work with her, because they don't even understand their own energy that well, okay? Like, if you're like 6 months as a new witch, there's no way you're going to understand your own energy. You're still learning how to meditate. You're still learning how to focus. You're still learning, how do I craft a spell? How do I do this? How do I do that? And the Morgan, when she comes, it's this powerful wave of energy. The only other thing that I can compare it to is Belith, minus all of the trickery and all of the darkness and all of that stuff. I mean, she could come to you as a very, very dark goddess, or she could come to you as, you know, just a goddess. And it's also interesting that people will say the Morrigan is dark. The Morrigan is a dark goddess, and when people say that, other people start to assume that she's used for cursing and hexing, and she's darkness, and she's evil, and pop culture has made her into this evil thing, but that's not what she is at all. She is the epitome of justice. She is the epitome of love. She is the epitome of finances. She is the epitome of change. That is what she is. That is why people warn people about the Morrigan. That is why people have a hard time working with Morrigan, because you don't ask her to bring you money. You don't say, hey, I need $50 to cover rent. You go to her and you say, my financial situation, or my love life, or my personal life, or this or that, it's different. It needs to change. It just obliterate it, right? Like, you go to her and you ask for change. And you have to be careful. You have to understand what you're asking. Because if I just go to her and I say, I don't like the city, I don't like my job, I don't like anything about this, she will slice it all away, point you in a direction, and leave you hanging to figure it out by yourself. You will get angry, you will get scared, you will get frustrated, you will try to reach out to her, and she's just like, this is what you wanted. Figure it out. And a lot of the times in our conversations, she will go back towards my job, go back towards how I got to where I am. Like, if I'm doing something stupid with money, which I've been doing a lot lately, she will come to me and be like, listen, okay, I put you here for a reason. Now grow up and start going down this path properly, or I'm gonna take it all away. And she will do that. Like, if you ask her for something and then you decide, oh, you know, like, here, I'll give you an example. If you ask her for a new job and you get the new job, but you're always calling in sick because you want to hang out with your friends, or you're spending your money recklessly, or you're just, you know, just doing stupid things, she will take it away. She'll take it all away, okay? So, let me just wrap this all up. How do I communicate with her? Tarot cards, Celtic cross, burn her incense, the Morrigan's incense that we made in a previous video, okay? You burn, like, you don't have to burn that specifically, but this is what I do, okay? Just keep in mind, this is what I do. What you do is up to you, okay? But what I do is I burn the incense, lay out the Celtic cross, call upon her energy, and sometimes she comes, sometimes she doesn't. But when she does come, you feel that powerful, bombastic, intense energy, and she will communicate with you, and that's how we communicate. And it's most of the times when I communicate with her, it's like, what's happening? What's happening right now? Where am I going? What pitfalls do I need to pay attention to? Stuff like that. Okay, so to wrap up this series, what I want to say to you is that your relationship and your experience with the Morrigan will never be the same as mine. As mine will never be the same as Joey Morris's. And Joey's will never be the same as whoever else, okay? It's always different, because every relationship with a god, demon, an angel, a fairy, a sprite, a troll, a troglodyte, a goblin, a hobgoblin, we're going into D&D characters here, okay? You get the point. It's all gonna be different, no matter who you are, okay? There may be similarities, but it's gonna be different. It's always gonna be different, okay? So I hope that you guys were able to learn something from this, and that you were thoroughly entertained by my discussion of the Morrigan. I wanted to do this series, she wanted me to do this series to discuss what it's like for me, personally, me, okay, not you, me, to work with her, okay? And I hope that, you know, if you go and you work with the Morrigan, that you'll do your own research. I didn't want to tell you who the Morrigan is, and her backstory, and her herbs, and her candles, and her directions, and how her altar should be done up if you do an altar for her, because that's for you to research. And that's for you to figure out. I wanted to share with you what it was like and what it still is like for me to work with her. Okay? I love all of you. Except for you in the back.